This is the Fantasy Football Crackbacks.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Johnny Legend. You guys know me by Fantasy Fornicator, hero, my guy Kevin Banks from Piggy Bank Picks. Thanks for tuning in to the Fantasy Football Crackbacks. And today we're dropping a show for you guys on this during the holiday season. And hopefully you guys pulled those championship wins, won your fantasy league, won some of that money, took that bag home, and really spoiled your family or even spoiled yourself. So today, we're just gonna be honest, man. We're gonna be real. Things we got right, things we got wrong, players we suggested for the fantasy push, for the fantasy playoffs, and hopefully helped you guys more than we hurt you guys. So, Kevin, go ahead and let's hit them with who we got right and who we got wrong.
All right, man. So I'm just gonna go with a couple quarterbacks that we talked about for the championship, and then we'll get into, the whole playoffs. But I would like to say I apologize. And the first quarterback I'm gonna bring up is Russell Wilson, the guy that was up in the race for the MVP. I just fell off at the last moment. Lamar Jackson took over that very easily. But yeah, Russell Wilson had this matchup versus the Arizona Cardinals. I thought the only thing there was Patrick Peterson and with Lockett, teasing us the week before, week 15, showing up for the first time in many weeks. DK Metcalf, Hollister, and the run game in Carson. I thought I was just going to set up the play action. And Russell Wilson just the last 3 weeks just wasn't that good or wasn't good enough to win you a championship, and he might have hurt you. So I had to apologize straight up for that advice. And that's my first one, and I'm going to give it back to you, man. So you can go off your list.
Yeah, man. First, and you know what, man? The whole thing of Russell Wilson, we all know he was doing his thing, and he was in MVP form. And like you said, towards the end of the season, second half, he just started to tail off. So can't really explain it. Just really hurt us as fantasy players. And my first guy that I had was Deshaun Watson, somebody that I recommended for the championship push, and somebody that totally crapped the bed, man. He had a horrible, horrible Week 16 championship game after he had a pretty good semifinals game where he threw 2 touchdowns. And, I got to apologize as well. Deshaun Watson, definitely somebody that failed me because I had him in 2 of my starting lineups in fantasy championships, and he definitely hurt me. Who's your next guy?
Yeah, so moving over with some more apologies. It's the same game, unfortunately, and it's going to be Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray was facing the Seattle Seahawks. They're one of the they're not a premier team in the secondary, top 10 worst actually in the league. So I thought this game was going to be back and forth, Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson. It didn't. It was actually cut short for Kyler Murray because of injury. And, well, that didn't do so great. So he had 118 yards passing. He had, I believe, a touchdown, 6 rushes, and about 41 yards. So his day was cut short. He could have maybe, capitalized on the matchup. He didn't. And for that, Kevin Banks has to apologize once again. Moving forward.
And yeah, man. And it's crazy because that game is a game that I was like, man, start all your players because it should be a high-scoring game, and definitely was not that. And another game that flopped, and I stayed in the same game for my quarterbacks. And I went with Jameis Winston, famous Jameis, somebody that was coming in red hot. The guy was throwing mad hot fire, throwing darts all over the field. Prior to the Week 16 matchup, he had 8 touchdowns coming into that game, back-to-back games, 4 touchdowns each, throwing for over 450 yards in each of those games. So you could definitely understand where I was coming from against the Texans too. When I saw him throw that first pick 6, I was like, all right, cool, get that out of the way. We're good. But the interceptions just kept coming, man. He ended up finishing with 1 touchdown, 4 interceptions, 335 yards. Yardage-wise was cool, but those interceptions ended up hurting more than helping for Jameis in this instance. So, yeah, man, apologies for that one, man. Who do you guys got next? Or who do you got next?
Yeah, I got you, man. So, look, now we're going to talk about, the playoff push because you had another video. And that was going to be Phillip Rivers. Now, I'm not going to apologize here because Phillip Rivers actually did pretty solid. I'm going to go try to read some of his numbers here. But let's see what I had. 900 yards in the playoff push 4 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. Now I know that ratio isn't the greatest, but the yards are definitely there. That means he was averaging about 300. The 900 was definitely just a rough estimate because it was just a little above that. So Philip Rivers wasn't somebody that you're like, oh, I got to start this guy. It's definitely someone that was in your waivers and probably still is if if you're playing fantasy still. But yeah, man, Philip Rivers, I'm not going to apologize, but he did his thing. I mean, he was pretty solid. And this last game, he was a dark horse. He did play the Raiders, and I thought the revenge factor was going to be there. That was actually his worst game out of the 3. So, he did better than Winston. He did better than Sean Watson. He did better than Kyler Murray, and he did better than Russell Wilson. So, hey, that was
Yeah.
the best advice I gave. That is my guy. So hopefully maybe you listened and started him in week 14 and 15. And if you did listen to us in 17, hopefully he still put you in a good position to win.
Hopefully, man. And another guy that I went with, somebody I was really high on at the beginning of the year, my guy Dak Prescott for the Cowboys, and he flopped as well, man. We got nothing but flops here as of right now. So week 16, 0 touchdowns, 0 picks, 265 yards, only 9 points for the offense. That's just pathetic. Jason Garrett, you need to pack your bags and head out of town. I don't know what the hell they're doing with you. You guys deserve a head coach like Adam Gase, somebody like that, because that's the type of trash that Dak Prescott wants to put out. You might as well have the coach to match it up. So definitely Dak. Week 15 he threw a couple touchdowns, but week 16 when it mattered most, when the money was right there within grasp, he choked. So sorry about that, guys.
Yeah. So the fantasy thing is hard, man. We're not going to be perfect. We just give educated guesses, if you will, with the matchups, how they've been doing into that, going into that game. And hey, we make these videos sometimes a week or two ahead, just to give you some insight about how you should proceed in fantasy. But now going to the running backs, which is a little better. And how Barkley, Saquon Barkley was somebody that I was really high on. He didn't do anything since that injury. He came back. I saw the Miami game. I was like, hey, this is the game he's going to get right. That Miami defense is not that good. And Eli Manning is back there. And that's when Barkley was at his best, going back to his rookie season, right? So that sparked him up. He had a great game. I mean, I could tell you the numbers, but look at me yourself. I mean, this guy balled out. And we're talking about the next game, right? The Washington Redskins for your championship. I mean, Saquon Barkley single-handedly probably won you your championship. And they're going to be like, hey, well, Barkley was always on my, why wouldn't I start him? No, dude, I was just telling you that this guy was going to be a league winner, and he was. So, Barkley, thank you, man, for all this list of, duds. You were the stud, and you picked it up when it mattered the most, man, and that's why you're going to be a top 3 pick in fantasy football next year. Let's go
Definitely.
running back.
Definitely. Actually, I still got a couple more quarterbacks I wasn't
Okay.
done with. But this one guy, Daniel Jones, that I spoke in one of our first videos that we did for the playoff push. And I know he was injured, but for week 16, championship week, it came through. He came through with 5 touchdowns, 352 passing yards. He did his thing. He came out there and he shows the potential that he has in that offense with the Saquon Barkley and what he could do with good coaching and just getting more comfortable with the system. So Daniel Jones, somebody else that I wanted to throw out there. Do you have any more quarterbacks?
As far as quarterbacks, those are mostly the guys that I was talking about. Going back to a video that I made like 6 weeks ago with you, or about 5 weeks ago, I did have Nick Foles in there, and this was him coming back from that injury, and he the word out that he was going to take over Minshew's job. If you look at Minshew's numbers, the last 3 weeks are actually pretty solid. In most leagues, he was putting up 20 points in the last 3 weeks, so that should have been Nick Foles. Unfortunately, things happen when you make videos, and it's the NFL, baby. I mean, when it comes to positions, people are hungry. It doesn't matter if it's the quarterback position. There's a guy behind you that wants to eat to feed his family and get that bread. So Nick Foles was one quarterback that I was talking about, and he was a dud. And that's pretty much it, man. So
I got one last one that I spoke about in that same video. Ryan Fitzpatrick, another quarterback that I was really high on, especially those 2 quarterback leagues. And did he end up doing? He threw for 419 yards, 4 touchdowns in championship week. So if you guys had him in your lineup, more than likely you guys won. So we did sprinkle in some nice, low key calls in there, So hopefully you guys listen to those videos. Hopefully you guys watched and stay tuned. So again, we were talking about matchups here. Players that we liked, at this point of the year, you're not thinking so much sit start. I mean, maybe at the flex position, but Dalvin Cook was somebody that I was talking about at the beginning of the year as a top 5 running back, and somebody that flopped towards the end. He got injured. We saw what happened to him. He ended up not finishing out week 15 and being ruled out on week 16. And it was just, it really hurt. It really hurt because he got you there to that game, and to not have him there is such a vital part of your team. That takes a lot out of you. And one thing I do want to say, I know I saw a certain fantasy page out there talking about, oh, I was right all along. I was right all along about Dalvin Cook. Like, no, you weren't, man. Like, any one of us, if you tell us, like, hey, if you draft this player in a second round, because a lot of people were taking him in the second or even third round, if you draft this player there, you're going to lose him for the championship game, but he's going to take you to the championship game for sure. I think all of us would take that opportunity without a doubt. So I just wanted to get that out there about Dalvin Cook, my first running back, who unfortunately got injured and then ended up flopping for us.
Yeah. No, man, if I could take a ticket to the championship game, you definitely know I'm gonna go do that. Anybody that's trashing a premier player in the league and saying that they got hurt in an inconvenient time, I mean, stop it. Stop it. Now, if you were to say someone like OBJ, then I get you because he's an injury-prone player and he's shown it the last couple of years. But moving forward, my running back, someone I was really big on, is my boy Joe Mixon. Now, Joe Mixon, this is somebody that I was talking about for the playoff push, and definitely for the championship game with that Miami matchup. But we're gonna go and look into what he did, and he had in those 3 games, the championship, playoffs. We had 69 touches, fellas. 69 touches. That is a lot. Now, depending on your league, some league gives you half a points for rush attempt. I was in a couple. Those are interesting. Now he had 334 yards and a touchdown. The touchdowns weren't there, but hey, it's okay. 334 yards. That means he was averaging 100 plus. And also to add to that in receptions, he had 8 receptions. That's like, a couple more than 2 a game and 83 yards. So he's not known to be, the greatest, you know, he ain't a CMC, but
Right.
definitely the touches were there. And now let's talk about the championship game. He disappointed. Let's be real. He disappointed. He had, some kind of stomach bug. And this is advice to anybody. If anyone has a stomach bug, Josh Jacobs had one earlier in the year. Any guy loses 8 to 10 pounds, I believe Le'Veon Bell had one as well. Stay away from these guys. I mean, I just learned that I got burnt. I didn't know when I made the video. Like I said, it was a couple weeks ago, but no excuses. His production was there. He did have 21 attempts versus the Miami Dolphins, only 50 yards. Kind of hard when you lose that much weight, especially at a running back in a position where, you take a beating and these linebackers are just trying to take your head off. So it asked a lot, but, hopefully he didn't lose it for you and he took you to the promised land once again because he had a good 7 games that he was just awesome and he turned it on and proved why you drafted him in round 2, or if you maybe drafted him a little early at the end of the first. That is my running back. So let's move forward.
Yeah, man. Joe Mixon, somebody started off really, really slow, and he overcame a lot. The offense was hurting, quarterback changes, offensive line was trash, but he showed his premier talent, somebody to look forward to coming into next year. So my next guy, we're going to go with Nick Chubb, somebody that flopped championship game as well. Week 15, though, semifinals, he had 17 touches, 127 yards, and a touchdown. So the volume was still coming there. And it was a tough matchup at home versus Baltimore, somebody he carved up early in the year. And he just flopped 15 touches, 45 yards. Hurt us, hurt me. I had him in a lot of leagues and definitely hurt. So Nick Chubb, another guy that I liked his role in the team. Kareem Hunt didn't even take that much away from him. To be honest with you guys, he only had two rushes for 8 yards, 4 receptions for 30-something yards. So the whole team flopped, really.
Yeah, they did. The Browns fell apart. But hey, to Chubb's credit, you were talking about earlier in the year. I mean, the guy is the leading rusher in the NFL. and that's even with someone like Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt. He came out and was more of a guy that was getting the receptions there. But hey, he did flop. But that's what happens sometimes, fellas. It's hard to predict these players and how they're going to do here, and especially when it comes to injuries and poor play around them. So let's keep going, and we're gonna talk about another flop, man. And I hate to keep making this, but we got to keep it real with you guys because what is it if we're gonna, be like talk about our wins? Now you gotta talk about your losses. And we had talked about there's so many pages that try to act like their stuff don't stink, and that's not what we do over here. Outcasts, your roses really smell like we already know. So
Yeah, no.
we're gonna talk about David Montgomery. David Montgomery had a great matchup for the week 16, and it was versus the absolute worst running defense in the league, the Kansas City Chiefs. David Montgomery did have 13 attempts, only 57 yards, and had a reception to add to that. That's not saying much. Not saying much at all. David Montgomery, you have been a complete bust. You had one game to show and prove yourself again to the fantasy community when it mattered the most, and you failed us. So I'll let you take it away because you are a Chicago Bear fan.
David Montgomery, somebody that I had all the excuses in the world at first, with reason, because he wasn't getting the volume at first. I felt like he wasn't getting into a rhythm. He started getting more touches, though, a little bit after the second half of the year, and he never put it all together. He had one really good game. That was it. Very unfortunate because I do think he is a talent, but I do wonder about Matt Nagy and that offensive system. I think he needs to fire himself as an offensive play caller and get a real offensive coordinator in there. So that's my little rant. My next running back, Chris Carson, Seattle Seahawks. And this one really, really hurt me, man. He got hurt actually. He week 16 championship game. Only finished with 60 total yards. He had one reception for 20. And, the Seattle got really, really banged up. Somebody that was in prime position to come through for you guys and help you win those big bucks and those trophies. Week 15, he had 133 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. So I really felt like he was going to have a field day on the Arizona Cardinals in Week 16 championship week. Unfortunately, he got hurt. Injuries, we cannot predict this. So I'm not going to apologize for that. We all know what Chris Carson would have done to that game. That guy's a beast. Unfortunately, he got injured. So that's my spiel on Chris Carson.
Yeah, Chris Carson, that's someone that had a championship game. I still won, but he made it a lot scarier for me going into those Sunday night games. And one thing, too, I think that Chris Carson, that injury is pretty big time, and that's something that's going to hurt him going into next year because I don't know. For example, there's a Miami Dolphin, Albert Wilson. I know he's a different position, but he's a guy that likes to cut a lot, and he's a yak type of a receiver. But those hip injuries are something that are serious, and for a running back, and the way he went down, and then this late in the season, is something that's kind of concerning. So stay tuned for that. Let's go to the wide receivers, and there's somebody. I mean, there's a couple guys I was just on. Late draft picks that I was just like, these are steals. And I'm just going to hit you with that double header right here, and that's Courtland Sutton and Michael Gallup. Courtland Sutton, you played like garbage, bro. Like, I'm talking about mad garbage. You had to go play the Detroit Lions secondary. Now, I know you don't throw the ball to yourself. I know you had a rookie quarterback that had, his first game with you and had 2 touchdowns, and people were like, hey, this Drew Lock kid is not that bad. He's still a rookie, and he couldn't take advantage of a weak secondary. But I'll say this, though. You did have 10 targets. So the targets were there.
Yep.
You had 5 receptions for 41 yards only, but the targets were there. So Courtland Sutton, I don't want to put it all on you because it wasn't all on you. It's your quarterback play. If there's 10 targets and whatever the quality of those throws, I watched some of the game. They weren't all that great. But Courtland Sutton, you didn't do it. And then going to my boy Michael Gallup, championship weekend. I told you Philadelphia Eagles, they have a horrible secondary. They did win the game, but guess what? Amari Cooper, one of the worst guys. And I've mentioned it before. I think that Michael Gallup, when it matters the most, is the better player. And some people were like, oh, you're crazy. We'll go back to his rookie season. When they were in the playoffs, who had a touchdown? Michael Gallup. It wasn't Amari Cooper. And now when it mattered the most, I know they didn't put up the points, but Michael Gallup had 11 targets, meaning the two guys I told you to take at 21 targets. That's a lot. And he had 5 receptions, just like Sutton had 5 receptions, but he did better with it, and that was 98 yards. So those are my 2 guys that I had there. Michael Gallup did your thing. Cortland Sutton, not so much. The targets were there. I say it was solid advice.
Yeah, I feel it. Let me finish up my 2 running backs and then my last 2 receivers real quick. Bear with me with my stuffiness, y'all. Sorry about that. A little sick. But Aaron Jones, somebody that I spoke about at the beginning of the year as well. And he came through week 15, 2 touchdowns, 51 rushing yards. He just was outstanding. Week 16, 154 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. I'm pretty sure it helped a lot of you guys win your championship weeks. Let's talk about another guy that I was low-key really high on, Miles Sanders. I talked about him in my videos. Miles Sanders finished up week 15, 19 rushes, 122 yards, and a touchdown, 6 receptions, 50-plus yards, receiving, and another touchdown. Then week 16, 20 rushes, 79 yards, and a touchdown with 5 receptions and 77 yards. So those 2 running backs I know came through for you guys, helped you win that money, helped you win that chip. And the 2 wide receivers, thank you, sir. And the 2 wide receivers that I had busted as well, somewhat. Allen Robinson, first up for the Chicago Bears. Week 15, he had 14 targets, though. And you were just talking about target share. I mean, week 15, 14 targets. Week 16, 12 targets. Week 15, he turned them into 7 receptions for 125 yards. Week 16, he turned those into 6 receptions for 50-plus yards. And, all you want is volume. You want an opportunity, and that's something that he had. And, again, the quarterback that he has is somebody you can't really trust in Mitchell Trubisky. Although he did have a good year for the most part with him, he came through in a big way. When it mattered the most, championship week, he came up with some duds, with a dud game. And then Christian Kirk, somebody else that I really, really liked coming into week 16. He was getting a lot of the targets as well, averaging just over 8 per game. But the thing is, week 15, 5 targets. Week 16, 5 targets for a total of 4 catches and 33 receiving yards. So those are my receivers. Those are my guys. They ended up flopping. Hopefully you guys still overcame and won your guys' leagues.
Yeah. Definitely, guys. So with all that being said, hopefully everything worked out for you guys. You guys got that championship. If not, we'll come with better advice. This is something that we're going to be working on. This is one of my first complete years. So I'll definitely, learn from my mistakes, try to give you guys the best that we can out here. And, yeah, man, have a happy holidays. Enjoy your New Year's. And Fantasy Football Crackback. This will be concluding this episode. On next one, stay tuned because we're going to talk about the players that we're talking about all year and how they did. And we're talking about stuff from June. So from us, happy holidays. Have a good one, folks.